Okay. Who has used the color attribute? Who has used the list type :none? Yes. Who has used text shadow? Not the abbreviated WebKit, not mods, not O, just text-shadow. That's people? Okay, start to get it down. Who's used not WebKit gradient, mods linear gradient? Who's used mods linear gradient? Oh, now we're starting to get lower here. Pseudo selectors multiplied on top of each other. See, now we're starting to weed down here. Okay, this is good. This is exactly the audience that I was looking for. This is exactly the audience that I think would really benefit from this, is understanding what those things are and how they're really used in the modern browsers. And by modern browsers, although I do frequently, first of all, can everybody hear me? I just want to make sure. I'm an extrovert. I like to talk loud. I'm always doing this. Crazy guy. Just want to make sure. If you can't hear me, please let me know. If I'm talking too fast, just say, slow down. By all means, just slow down. So, although I do mention how IE is the bane of our existence, is like just horrible in this. IE 9, great strides ahead. IE 10 has been announced. It's even better. But there's still a lot of things missing. So what we will be looking at, though, is effects and techniques that will work in modern browsers, current versions of all the ones that are out here. So I'm just going to open up the presentation here. HTML5. So first of all, who am I, right? Well, I got to do my own little kind of personal plug. My blog, which is I need an editor really badly. I'm not looking for anybody on that, but I ramble and I've got spelling mistakes. I'm a designer/programmer. I'm not an editorialist, even though I will be editing and writing for Smashing Magazine as of coming shortly. Email address if you want to get in contact with me, and all of the little social media things, ask MP. So Twitter, Facebook, about.me, all this stuff, just ask MP. That's it. It comes from all my old colleagues and whatnot, always coming to me to answer their questions. So what do I do exactly, and why am I really talking about this? I'm a freelancer, right? As that basically comes down to, I'll code for coffee. I'll code and design for coffee. I'm a freelancer, right? Also, I do consulting for, I'm a consultant for various websites that are starting up and doing a lot of things. So I'll teach for coffee, right? Also, because of my background in design, I'm a communication design group. Okay, that's just really complex. I'm not going to go into all of the things that are related to that. And of course, last but not least, I'm an avid handler. So that's who I am. So this is what you hear. HTML5's CSS3 tags that are coming out. What does that generally mean, right? Well, right now you're going to see a tag on in HTML. This is CSS. Hello world, right? You get a nice color, maybe some wicked color, epic border radius, all those different things, and you result in something fanciful. So you're now taking text and converting it into a nice little pretty design. That's CSS, right? That's all it is. Just designing your XML coding, right? So anybody who hasn't been involved with it, who hasn't been tagging, that's what it is. What we're here to look at is how to code things in the different browsers, like Chrome, Firefox, Safari, and I'm going with my preference here, by the way. Even though Safari and Chrome are pretty much tied. Right? Opera, and of course, last but not least, the dreaded IE. So, what do they support? Now, did everybody read all of these different things? I haven't done all of them, but I wanted to give a good helping of what's actually supported by a lot of this stuff. So I'm going to point some of the stuff out here. The calculations is one that's not really used. It's a fairly new one. I don't go into too much detail on a lot of this stuff, but no, calculations, big thing, will be coming very shortly for Chrome, Safari, and all those guys. Background image, really good. Going through the list of things that don't work in IE, border images, animations, and whatnot. CSS gradients, although you can do gradients in it, it doesn't work very nicely, and I'll touch on that. Text shadow transitions and column layers. All the things that designers really want to update. Yes, question, perfect. Ask away.
Is this presentation going to be available online for us?
This is already online for you.
Fabulous, thank you.
In fact, if anybody wants to view this at all at any time, you can go to prezi.com, search up CSS. I think that's how it works, because unless you make a private presentation on Prezi, it's always public. Absolutely.
Right, thank you.
So I'll be going through a few of these things. As you notice, the best featured items, Safari and Chrome, in my opinion, the only thing that they're really missing is the calculations. Aside from that, they're awesome. So like I said, I don't want to stick on this, I want to get into the actual practical things of this. But I did want to give you a note here, how much IE. Do we have anybody that's an IE fanboy or an IE worker that loves IE that uses it right now? What version?
9.
Okay, that's great. No, 9 is fine. They've been really boasting 9. In fact, we had them come in and talk here I think a couple of classes ago. They're really boasting their HTML support, HTML5 and CSS3 support. Obviously, it's not the case that they don't support everything, but they are making strides. So, that being said, how many of you are designing on monitors that are like this? Right? Raise your hands. Okay, how about bigger, smaller? How many people are designing their websites towards things like 800 by 600? Right? Do you know that 0.6% of users out there are using that right now? 0.6%. That's the phone usage. 1024 by 768 is only at 13.8% right now. That's a tiny, tiny amount to be doing all that stuff. What the majority of people are doing it there is 1280 by 800 or more. Yes?
What's that? Is that a North American side or a global side?
I believe this is global, and I can give you the website, and I plan to. But that's a great question, is where are these statistics grabbed from? I wanted to make sure that when we did this, that I was taking a look at the statistics for browsers, for screen size, and all those different things. So I went on to the, I believe it's the W3 Schools has the portion, and that's the links I can provide as well. So, next thing I want to bring up, libraries, right? JavaScript has always had these giant, great libraries. Well, us as CSS designers haven't really had much, but we do have some. You said you were working with some frameworks earlier on for CSS. Are there any that I missed? No. I'm sorry, I think your name, my apologies on that. What frameworks are you using?
Less.
Yes. How are you finding it? Actually, I'm wanting to get into it. It's good. Has anybody heard of any of these different compilers or these different frameworks? Has anybody heard of any of these? Aside from less?
What about, I think it's called Elastic CSS?
I've heard of Elastic. I didn't put them all up here, but there are definitely more out there. One of the other things that as CSS designers you have available to you, a lot of WYSIWYG editors. What you see is what you get. UI, you can say, this is my block of text. I want to design this for you. So you have that. JavaScript guys don't have that. So, going quick here. Taking a look at our first thing that would be different. Sorry, really bad intro into this, but I should have done any question. Okay, right now, web design is using these different RGB values for the color. For instance, that 6-digit alphanumeric code. Who's using the hashtag a 6-digit code? Who's using RGB? Who's using HSL? Thank you. HSL. Does anybody know what HSL is?
Saturation minus.
Cheaters.
Yes.
The difference between the two, however, is not something that a lot of people really understand. Right? These are three different variations of how those different color systems end up working. In RGB, it's basically you have three different lights that come in the screen. Right? Red, green, blue. And it's how much of that light you're shining at a certain time, that's the color that comes out. With HSL, however, it's like you have one giant spotlight that you can put different filters in front of, and you can adjust the brightness of that light at the same time. Does that make sense to everybody? Yes? So which do you think has more control? HSL. Trick question. They both have about the same amount of control, but it depends on how easy you want to have to edit later on. There was a demonstration that I was going to end up doing with this. However, unfortunately, Coda, the application that I generally choose to, happened to crash and not save my snippet that I would save. But I will go in and I will demonstrate the HSL afterwards. Somebody remind me that he would demonstrate that. Next thing that's a really big component, I should be mentioning here. The reason why I bring this up is because one of the new specifications in CSS3 is the addition of HSL and HSLA into the specification. So browsers can now start to use HSL and HSLA. The A stands for alpha, by the way, which is the transparency feature. Am I going too fast for everybody, or for anybody, or too slow, too jargony? Trust me, the presentation doesn't last that much long. We'll actually get into some of the good stuff later on. CSS gradients. So there's a smaller group of people that said they're using gradients. This is from the spec. It's pretty complex, and I think this is probably why nobody's really dove into it, right? I mean, has anybody at least seen the gradients, even if you haven't coded it, haven't written it, have you taken a look at it and said, oh crap, that's a what? Right? Let me break this down. It's actually fairly simple, right? You have a background image, right? You just say linear gradient for linear, radial gradient for radian. And I'm just going to concentrate on linear right now because the radial and the elliptical, that actually starts to get complex because now you're talking points. Linear gradients are very simple, very easy to use. And this is also the majority of reasons that people use images online, which is half the specs. I'm using HSL here, but you can use the RGB if you want to do as well. All you need to do, specify your starting point, right? For instance, this is left, so I'm going from the left over. If I need to go from the right over, I can do right. I'm doing top left, left top, left bottom, center. Wherever your starting point is, that's all you need to specify. There's different things that you can say this place to this place, but to create a generic one, if you're going left to right, that's all you need to put. And what's even easier, if you're going down, you don't even need to specify that because the default is down. All you need to do is start specifying and saying, this is my starting color, this is my ending color, and if you have anything in the middle, you say this is the color, at that percentage or at that pixel. That's how simple gradients are, right? Pretty easy, right? Now, unfortunately, it's not as supported as we would like to, even with the current browsers. Right now, you still need to have that abbreviation to start, even though every browser, with the one exception, of course, can use the same different formatting. Chrome and Safari do have a secondary version that they can use that's slightly different, but they work with the new standard that CSS3 is rolling out. The example here, when I said by IE does support gradients, but not CSS3 gradients, you can't do color stops unless everybody know, I could be wrong on this, but I did the research. To my knowledge, you can't do color stops. You can't have multiple colors in it. You can only do that in particular. So, make sense? So gradients are something that we're going to take a look at definitely in the coding here. How about those pseudo elements? Right? Pseudo elements is another one of the big things. Obviously, we had one person that was so passionate about it. That's the one thing he's explaining through what he's learned for the last month. But what it allows you to do is it allows you to do things like adding content to the actual object you're styling, right? Similar to how you design code for hover or an after of the old link system. This allows you to create another object associated to nothing. For instance, if I had this type of coding here, where it's a giant list, I could pair it up with this coding. List style none, which means there's no bullets, there's no nothing, there's no padding, so it should end up being just a regular list. No padding and margin on the list items. But if I added a dash space in the before content, what would end up happening is I would actually have my list, dash space before everything. Even though it's not here, it's actually showing up there. Does everybody see that? Who here wants to try that? Who here would like to see that in action? Probably would use that in the future. Wow, not as many. You're supposed to all do this. 2 hands up. This is great. This is awesome. Am I not making this passionate enough? Okay. We'll take a look at how really this can apply to an object in the demonstration. Because it's not only that you can add that little tiny piece of dash space or anything like that, or bullet number system, you can actually do something even more to this because you're creating a secondary object. So Okay, well, I'm going to wait until later to do that, which is actually right now. Practical use. So how do we end up using yes?
So I've got a question about that. If the content that you add
Yeah.
is would contain HTML,
Yes.
would the styling apply to the HTML that you've just added?
Yes. You can create effects and styles directly to this new object that you're creating. Essentially, you're creating a new object on the page around the object that you've selected using the pseudo select. Not around, sorry, inside.
Can we go back to that slide?
Right.
So if instead of a dash, you said, all right, here's an image.
Yes.
Okay. And it's got a class of such and such.
There are special characters that are allowed in there that unfortunately remove that. However, what you would be able to do is you'd be able to set a height, a width, a positioning, a padding and margin, and a background URL that would take that position. So if you wanted to create a span, you wouldn't create a span inside of that. What you do is you create an object that's 10 pixels wide by 10 pixels high using CSS content, right? Height, 10 pixels, width, 10 pixels, background image, URL, whatever the URL of the image would be, and that would appear before the thing.
Before the?
In the before thing. So,
And you would put that under content?
yeah, underneath the word content.
Oh, I see.
Like as in,
it would be other.
exactly. So, and this isn't the demonstration that I'm going to show you how to do that.
Okay.
No, I'm not having an added image, but I will definitely bring that up again. Absolutely. Thank you. So, practical uses. I know this is kind of a boring thing and going through slide by slide. That's not why you're here. What you guys want to see is the fun things. You want to see how to do the fancy stuff. So who here has seen different effects like, can you really see that over there? Who's seen this type of thing and you have this in Photoshop and you bring it over as an image? Has anybody ever done that? Said, oh, I need this type of crop shadow, blah, blah, blah. Do you know that's completely possible in CSS? I'll give you a hint. Yes, it is. One downside, only in WebKit right now. The effect that we're looking at is actually being done by something called background clip, which is a new feature, which is available, and this is once we start getting technical. So if anybody starts slowing down, just let me know. One of the new features in this, okay. Find some of this up here. In here, this background clip is a new type of CSS attribute. Mozilla does have one, and the CSS3 standard is actually background clipping, right? Only the background clip. However, only WebKit right now has text as one of the things that you can clip the background to. So let me just give an example of what this actually does. By the way, the only HTML that goes into this page here is that, right? I enlarge this, right? Body, H1. That's all that is. No double things, no creating a span and a span, no nothing. Just header one. So I'm going to close this to give us some more room to work with here. But the way that these have been working, this way, right? The way these work is I'm using a shadow to create background. Does that make sense, everybody? Probably not. Okay. All of this gray is actually a drop shadow. So I'm going to break this down for you. So this is where you follow along and learn. If you have a laptop, by all means, try to copy this down. Background color is used to a DOM. So let me see if I can create a new item here that we can build together. Right? Great. So I've got a nice little DOM here. H2. Right? In that H2, if I give it a background color of black, like this. See how that ends up calling the whole H2 object, right? That's not really nice. Obviously, if I color the text white, you're going to see the text is still there, obviously. Oh, autocorrect. That's still white. Horrible. However, if I give the text shadow, right, this nice dark, sorry, this nice light gray, you can see it's starting to come out there, but it's not really what we're looking for. The problem is that the background color is getting in the way. If we actually say fill the text, and this can either be color or WebKit text fill color, transparent, or for instance RGBA 0000, which is basically just black at 0 alpha, right? What ends up happening is it gets rid of the color of the text, but the drop shadow is still there. Does that make sense? Right? And I say that a lot. I just want to be yes. Okay. Does that make sense? Yes.
The shadow is as if there's like a light shining on the text.
Exactly.
And it's creating a shadow below.
Exactly.
And then the light is moving and then you're positioning the shadow there, right?
Exactly. So if I wanted to, I could actually say, you know what, take this and I'm going to move this by 3 pixels instead of 1 and 4 pixels, right? It's going to move that down and blur it a bit more, right? So my drop shadow is basically just a duplicate of the object, shifted in pixels, negative and positive, and then blurred a certain amount. Right? And then you can actually color it as well, so the color can be different colors. That's the way it works.
Excuse me.
Yes.
So far, is there any of this that's not available for Firefox or?
Right now, this is completely available. The only difference is that you just use color instead. That's it. If I save this, same thing.